All right. Well, welcome to yet another exciting edition of UTVcom News Live. Today we're going to talk with Scott McCown. He's down in Hurricane area,
St. George.
St. George. Okay. And Scott's one of our dealers down there. So if you live in that area, he's the guy to go to for any equipment or questions or anything. And Scott recently tested out our single rider cord.
Oh.
There you go. And on a snowmobile, which is something we haven't done before. So we thought, hey, let's bring him on and hear the story. So Scott, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And so Kirk just shared the link to the cord in our chat. And if anybody wants to chat, feel free. You can ask Scott questions too as you're doing it. So where do we want to start here?
Well, the way that I came up with that idea of maybe using the single rider was about a month ago. Me and my three buddies, me and my two buddies, my son-in-law went to Mammoth, California to snowmobile. And so what we brought was just the handheld radios. And so for 2 days when we're riding, we couldn't necessarily communicate, obviously, as we're riding because it's handheld and you got to bring it to your mouth. I didn't have any extension mics, but and what we found was it worked when we stopped. But, that if somebody was stuck and I was riding, I didn't know he was stuck until I stopped. And then I could get on the radio and say, is everybody okay? And then we could check in and verify that somebody wasn't stuck into a tree and we had to go back and dig them out or whatever. And so for 2 days we did that and it worked because at least we could kind of keep track of each other. And so that's when I talked to you guys and said, hey, what do you think? And you weren't sure how it would work with the noise on the snowmobiles. And I thought I'd just go ahead and give it a shot. And so I ordered 4 of them and put them in my helmet, my son-in-law's, and my two buddies' helmets. And we just went up last weekend up here locally in Cedar Mountain. And we rode them for 2 days. And the initial part was kind of hard because my buddies never dealt with that before. So, I had to get them set up. And so it took us about 30 minutes of putting the radios where we needed them in backpacks or in their jackets and showing them what the cable does and what the PT, because they had no clue. And so once we got that together, got everyone on the same frequency, which is, I also use a CTS or CTCCS, right? A privacy code or tone on the channel we were on because I didn't want anybody else just by chance that, interfering with our conversations. So got that set up, started running it. And by the end of the second day, my battery, I forgot to charge it overnight. So by almost the last 30 minutes of the ride, my battery went dead on my radio. And at that point, I felt naked. Because I was down in a valley and they were up on a hill, but they didn't know that I was down in a valley. And we knew where we were going, down my valley and down their hill to catch up. But if I had gotten stuck, I couldn't have communicated with them. I'd had to yell. They had to do some searching, the whole thing. And I would just right then is when I realized how well these work up in the mountains, because you're never really more than a quarter to a half mile away from each other when you're riding. I wouldn't even say more than a quarter mile. And we had communication all day long. One of my friends, he would go ahead and he would kind of get behind us and he might get stuck or decide not to climb something. And we could call him up and say, hey, Jerry, where are you at? And he goes, I was following you, but I turned around. I'm back down in this valley. And we say, stay right there. We'll be right there. And it took a lot of stress out of riding with people, especially at varied levels, and we just had a blast. We were able to communicate as we're riding, and my sled is probably the loudest. I got a twin pipe CPI on there, and when it braps pretty loud, and I can still hear it through my helmet. with the radio about half volume. If they were calling me or if I was calling them, they could hear me without interference with the machine. And so it just worked out really well. Very surprised, very excited. When I got done, I called Kirk. I'm like, hey, thumbs up. And
So
of course,
I know that like two-way radio communications are the least clear, versus like intercom. Intercom's wired, so you get really clear. Did you have a hard time understanding them because of how loud their machine is and it picking up their machine's noise when it was transmitting to you, or that noise being transmitted into your ears?
Well, with most of the snowmobile helmets, they're mostly wearing full face helmets, or at least a front facing helmet. So the mic is somewhat protected from a lot of noise. And I didn't have a problem at all hearing them, and they didn't have a problem hearing me. If we were separated by like a hill and if I was in a valley and they were slightly on the other side, obviously our transmission was the issue, not necessarily the or the quality of sound.
Yeah.
So, but all day long we had no problem. And the fact that the battery or the radios are batteried and they're not tied into any electrical system, then there's really no interference with what's going on.
Right.
I guess probably the only time that I probably had a little bit of a hard time was my radio got sucked down into my backpack a little too far, and my antenna probably was not really escaping the top of the backpack. But again, that wasn't even an issue because we weren't that far apart from each other. So, we might have been a couple 100 yards to maybe a quarter mile at any one time away from somebody, where we were on one side of a valley and my buddy Jerry was around the backside, and not a big hill, but we were able to communicate over to him, and we were able to have him just sit there and wait, and we can come around and get him. Or when my son-in-law got stuck up on the hill and I was below him and I just said, trench it. And he could hear me as he's going up, So the communication was fantastic.
Do you feel like your snowmobile is louder than your UTV?
Absolutely. Yeah. Without a doubt, my snowmobile is louder than because like I said, it's a twin pipe with an aftermarket can, so there's very little silencing on that one. And the other snowmobiles, the newer versions, like my other snowmobile is a stock setup, and then the other two sleds that my buddies were riding were 2020 and 2021. Hold on a second. There. Sorry. And so the other two sleds are newer, and they're actually even quieter. You could hold a conversation with them running right next to each other, whereas with my sled, I have to shut it off if I want to effectively talk to somebody sitting next to me.
At idle, it's too loud. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still running 2,000 RPMs, but it's just so it's fairly loud. And I think Kirk's biggest concern, yours as well, I believe, was that those speakers wouldn't allow you to hear it.
Too much background noise getting in. Yeah.
No problem at all. I mean, we could hear anytime that somebody called. It really also depends on how well they're holding the push to talk button, how they're communicating. There's those kind of nuances, but the actual physical, when it came through into the headset, no problem whatsoever.
Awesome. I got some photos if you want to go through them.
So this is how I finished out the back of my helmet. And so just pulling the wires, tucking up underneath the back, as Kirk had mentioned in his previous video on how to install it. And then I just took those two stickies for strain relief. So then that way it was on the heaviest portion of the cable. And that cable would just slip right down. And I kept one cable. You could see on my backpack, on a picture of the backpack, maybe.
Should I get the backpack picture?
Yes, it's one of these.
This one?
Yeah, do that one.
Yeah. So you can see on the side next to the helmet is where I strapped the Velcro push to talk. So that way it was my left hand and not my right, which is the thumb throttle. And then on the right side, I got the cable come down and it has a little clip. So anytime I wanted to take the helmet off, I could unclip, set the helmet off, and then put the helmet back on, and the cable was right there. So it was a real easy connection. I didn't feel like I had to be tethered to my backpack or to the helmet all the time. So it was like I said, the first 1 or 2 times doing it, next thing you know, it became commonplace on how to get on and off. So
Nice.
very well done.
And those little stickies, the ones that you were showing on the back, those are the ones
Yeah.
that came with ours, with the kit, right? Those little zip tie.
Yes.
Those
Yeah.
this one right
The
here.
little white
Those
3M
2 white
stickies. Hmm.
Yeah. Those came with
And
the kit.
so I used 2 of them on the back, and I only used 1 on the mic because I like having the mic being a little bit movable. So I used it more center of the mic and allowed it to kind of flex up and down and around, so that way it wasn't so stiff when I was closing the helmet, because it's a modular helmet.
Interesting.
So that's a picture right there. You can see the mic on the side.
Yeah, and on the inside, I just have 1 singular, just about 3 inches back from the mic itself, that's zipped around the mic, and that's just what holds the mic in place. And then the padding, because they snap in, most of the newer helmets, the padding comes out and you can put it back in, it snaps in or Velcros in some fashion. So it really held the mic no problem. And not once throughout the 2 days of riding did we have a malfunction with the mic coming out or something.
Good.
Yeah.
We've had good luck with those zip ties, those
we have.
stickies.
Yeah.
Those are amazing.
Those 3M stickies are pretty good.
Yeah. I actually had taken one off, and then I cleaned it back up and kind of heated it up a little bit and stuck it back on, and it's still sticking on the back of my on my helmet there, and no problems whatsoever. So, and the bungee, I thought I would see. So right here is my son-in-law, and you can see where the mic is just sitting right there. I don't even have it in front of his mouth,
Right here.
because, like on the side-by-side, you need it in front of your mouth to key the mic because of the intercom. Whereas here, the only time that you're going to key the mic is when you press to talk. So it doesn't have to be in front of your mouth. So it can be off to the side and still pick up the noise or the talking as you're keying the mic. So
I think it's interesting that you took the windsock off too. So, and you still had clear communications. So
yeah. And I think that's because it's sitting right in front of that nose cone or that mouth cone there. So it is fully protected from wind. You may get some back cut wind on it, like on his helmet. When he drops it down, he can leave his visor up, but he still has a motorcycle front on it, and actually somewhat bigger with these modulars. And even regular snowmobile helmets that aren't modular, they have a fairly good mouthpiece in there, and there's a lot of room inside there. But with the foam sock on there, it felt like when I would close my modular, I had to really adjust it. And so I just took a chance, took it off, and we rode 2 days with it just like that. And no problem. We had a foot and a half of snow up there that we were powdering through, and no issues whatsoever.
It probably, because he's not relying on the Vox, right? Like normally if you were in a side-by-side,
yeah, the box.
that wind is going to be opening up the Vox.
Yeah.
Right.
But just a
With
2-way
the
radio, you don't
the
have it.
box. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you were using GMRS channels?
I was. Yeah, I think I was using channel 19 and then like 74 megahertz on the CTCSS on both the text and the transmit and the receive. Because, just being standard GMRS, then there's a good chance if someone else is running radios that we would get some interference or something would, key the mic. And so I just went ahead and did that. And that way, obviously they can hear us, but we don't have to hear them. So, that it works out really well. I run my GMRSs on that all the time, even with my side-by-side, because most of the time people aren't going to catch that same sub frequency that I'm going to be running on. And so just using the little red radio that came with it, which is that Bofang pre-programmed, I couldn't program it in with it on channel mode. So I went to frequency mode, put the frequency in, and then I did it on 11 and 13 for the text, for the transmit and the receive. And then I just left it on frequency mode, and then I locked the channel. So I hit the lock button. So that way, while it's rolling around in the backpack, it's not accidentally getting keyed or something pushed or so once we did that, because I didn't have mine on there and I accidentally hit the FM button. And so after somebody would key the radio, about 30 seconds later, the FM, which had no channel on it, was just blowing out my ears. And I'm like, what? And then, so I did that, once I got it on there, locked. So all the buttons are canceled. The only thing that works is the radio knob, and worked out fine. And then I think I mentioned to Kirk, the other thing is I would probably recommend getting that Nagoya extended antenna that can get you a little higher, especially if you're putting it in a backpack. So then that way you almost always have some kind of antenna sitting outside. But fantastic, worked great.
So have you, I know that snowmobilers have used they don't use GMRS. There's like this other.
A lot of them have been using the Cenas, aren't they? The Cardos or whatever.
Yeah, there's another one that it's like
MERS. We're talking MERS.
It's an acronym. I can't remember what it is, but nobody besides snowmobilers use it. I can't remember what it is. BNS or something like that, or I can't remember it. But
yeah, I've seen a few videos of other guys with their radio set up that way, and that's great, I guess. But I don't think it has any more range than what you're going to get on the GMRS with a 5-watt radio.
Yeah.
And then the other thing with the Cardos, I wanted to see just what was good about them or bad about them, and watched a few videos. And what's obviously nice is that they're basically just one little thing right there, and Bluetooth to the speakers inside, or they're wired to the speakers, I think, and has a little mic. But if you're not within basically a line of sight, forget it, so I mean, you'd almost have to be able to see the guy. And if you're in some trees or a slight slope or a little bit of a variation of terrain, more than likely you're not going to catch up or find out what's, catching any information from them.
Those Cardos are Bluetooth. That's how they connect it.
Yeah. So they would Bluetooth in like a daisy chain, or they call it like a web chain, so people can come in and out of it.
Motorcycles do.
Yeah. And
the other thing on those,
I don't think it's worthwhile
that you have to do to connect them. You press this, hold it for 3 seconds. Your light turns on. Let me see how mine goes on. So these, you don't have to do any of that pairing type of stuff. And then, but one of the things you were looking at was just like on a cost perspective, right? Was on those. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the costs of the single rider system, I mean, you just really can't beat that. For one, you're getting a stereo headset. So if you do want to play music, now you're getting it through there. Obviously with the radio, you're basically getting a mono, because that's what the radio is putting out. But for communication, that's just fine. But the other part was the cost. Like, it's really hard to imagine. I think those Cardos run anywhere from $300 to $450 a piece. Those other radios, I think that you were talking about, that you figure that some snowmobilers are running, just the radio and the key mic. I think those probably run more than the single rider setup, which is what I believe $209. I think is the retail on that. And so for cost wise, I mean, if you have one radio and a couple of headsets or a couple of helmets, all you have to do is just get another helmet or another headset with the cable, and you can swap the radios over. And with these radios, they charge up. They last pretty much 2 days. I think that just because I was on mine so much trying to communicate with, we'll call him Jerry, but I probably used it more so than I would any other time, right? So I don't think he's watching, so we're okay. But I think because I was using it very frequently, because I wanted to try it out in all types of scenarios, when I'm stuck. And the great thing is that, if you wanted to, you could have a couple of these radios, a couple of the batteries or whatever. And as a matter of fact, I have a couple of other of these radios, and I brought them with me. And the second day, my buddy Jerry forgot to turn it off, so his battery was dead. And fortunately, I had another battery, and I was just able to swap it out with a battery, and off we go. So worked out very, very, very well. So they also make extended batteries for those things too, that aren't very much money. You can buy if you wanted to beef that up at all. But we've had really good luck with those batteries. I've been pretty impressed with those things.
Yeah.
So,
But I think that, if you're going out for a couple of days, more than likely you're going to be in a situation where you could charge it overnight. And we just didn't. We were like, oh, we'll give it a shot. And mine was the only one that died outside of Jerry's, but he had the new. But Jermaine and Scott, my friend Scott, their batteries lasted 2 days, because when they got done riding, they shut them off. When we were ready to go, they turned them on, and that's all they had to do. And they loved the idea that once it was completely set up the first time that they understood it, after that, I didn't have to say, oh, let me help you. Let me show you. It was, a very short learning curve. And it really made the day. I truly felt naked by the end of the second day when I didn't have communications, because I could have gotten into, as a matter of fact, I was looking at a few hills. I'm like, oh, let's do that. And then I thought, no, because more than likely at the end of the day, I'm going to mess up. And then they're going to have to be searching for me for an hour, and I'm going to miss Super Bowl. So,
did you ever get in a situation where you were far enough apart where you didn't hit that you lost communication?
No. Like I said, even if we were up in, like, say, Mammoth, we would have never been in that situation, because typically when you're snowmobiling, you want to stay as close to somebody as possible anyways. And for the most part, we always ride pretty much in the same area. There was times that I would go up this knoll and ride around up in the trees, and my son-in-law and Scott and Jerry were down at another knoll riding in the trees, and they're like, where are you at? And I said, well, I'll just meet you at the last place that we stopped. And so they were on one end and I was on the other, and we could come back to the middle and meet back up, and then say, all right, let's go off over here. And that worked out really well. Another time, me and my son-in-law were having lunch. My buddy Scott and Jerry took off, and they're like, where'd you go? And we're like, we're still here. And so they rode around, and we said, well, we'll find you when when we're done, we'll radio you up. And as soon as we got down and started looking for them, said, hey, where you at? And they said, we're coming around west, and there they are. So, really, really impressed with it. And then I don't know, have we talked about the little Bluetooth dongle thing? Yeah.
No.
So the other thing is that with the single rider, it has a cable you can plug into your phone so you can listen to music while you're riding. However, my iPhone is old, and it also has the adapter plug that goes from the charger to the 3.5, which doesn't work very well somewhere along that connection. And I remembered I have these for flying, so then that way I could Bluetooth my headsets without having to be plugged into something. And so you can actually plug this into that 3.5 cable on the single rider, set it in your backpack, put your phone in your front pocket or wherever you want to keep that safe, turn the music on, and you can listen to music while you're riding and still communicate. The only thing I noticed is that it had to be turned on, because I had it plugged in without it being turned on, and I could only hear people. They couldn't hear me. So it kind of cut the mic out or something. We're not sure. But once it was turned on, then we didn't have a problem of communicating whatsoever. So these work out really well. Amazon, somewhere around $25 for something like that. And they probably have a 2-day charge on them at, 8 hours a day or something. So.
Yeah, pretty amazing. I mean, then you've got a Bluetooth interface to your headset. That's pretty cool. Keep your phone in your pocket. And
so just like the Cardos, now we can still listen to music, and we can still talk and communicate over a longer distance at a cheaper price. To me, it was just, it checked all the boxes. And then the thing I found out was the way that the mic or the earpieces are on the new helmets. They actually make most of the new helmets to have communication set in them. And so if you take it out of the protective cover and then set it down in that little disc area that they've got, then you can Velcro that in there and then put the protective cover over the top of it with some Velcro. And it works out fantastic. And my buddy Jerry was concerned about it pressing against his ears, and he still had easy 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch between the mic or the headset and his ears where the pads were. And not once did anybody have a problem when they were putting the helmet on. So worked out really, really well. And the install, once I got one done, the other 3 went pretty quick. First one, you just have to kind of figure it out. And watching Kirk's video helped, but you're still having to do it by yourself. So I still had to kind of figure it out, watch the video a few times, and it definitely works to place the mic first, get, whether you want it on the left side or the right side, and then you can put your 2 speakers in and how you want the cable to be routed around the back of the helmet. And like I said, once I got through mine, the rest of them was much easier. So
awesome. Well, we really appreciate you telling this story and giving us a firsthand account of that use case, because we have not really promoted this because we weren't sure. It's worked great for motorcycle, 4-wheelers. I mean, we've had tons of success, similar type experiences when they're out riding about the difference it makes. But we haven't really talked to snowmobilers because we're like, I don't want to make this, say this thing works until we've got some experience with it. So that's really awesome.
I just don't see that that the snowmobile is going to be. It is obviously louder. Most motorcycles are 4-strokes now, but there's still a lot of noise in those regular MX. They're not as protected of a helmet as what most people are going to ride with a snowmobile. So when I was thinking about it, I thought that, you're getting just as much, if not more, sound protection from the snowmobile helmet than you would from a regular motocross helmet, unless you're using a motocross helmet on a snowmobile. But even still, I had the radio turned at about half. So, and I'm fairly hearing impaired and it worked fine for me. So I think if someone were, even worse than I am, they could turn it up more. And it's not like you're getting a constant communication. It's only those times that you want to make sure that you're with your group. And so, worked out really well on my end of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know that if you have that little radio and you're actually using the FM for your music, that music will mute when the transmission comes in, which is pretty cool. The radio mutes the music for the FM. I'm sure it doesn't on the Bluetooth, but it doesn't mute. You're probably
right. No, on the Bluetooth, it's still there. So basically, you just have to kind of talk over it. But
it's being at a party, right? Backyard party, music in the background. Yeah,
exactly. So, and the cool thing is that for me, I can turn my music up and down on my watch, so my phone. So I could, if I really needed to, I don't have to go to my phone and pull it out. I can adjust it. And most people have some way of controlling their phone outside of just the phone nowadays, I think. But as far as the connection and everything working really well, and the way that I set up 2 of my backpacks, one for me and my son-in-law, having the push to talk button on one side and the cable coming down the other side. And except for he had his push to talk button put on his right lapel. So when he was climbing a hill and somebody called on the radio, it was one of my buddies, and he thought he had to answer it. So he takes his thumb off the throttle, which was a big mistake. So it's like, put it on the left side, buddy. So at least I got to get him out unstuck.
Yeah.
Okay. But it worked really well.
Awesome. Well, that was a great story. So thank you for relaying that and taking some time to talk to us today.
I'm excited for it for the people in the snowmobile area to try it out. I thought about it and I've had other people inquire about it, and I just never had tried it because I had no need for it. And to be able to actually try it in an environment such as that, to see how well it works, people would be really surprised. And they don't have to go to the extreme of putting a little dongle in like I do, or going to the privacy code. All they got to do is plug it in, put it on the channel they want, and off they go. So,
so last question: you bought all the radios and stuff. Are they gonna steal any of them from you or purchase from us?
Well, so yeah, they did. But when I did, I gave them the option because this was more my trial, because I wanted to see how it worked, and I knew I would use it no matter what. And because I'm that guy, I like to try new things and make it work. And
you're the guinea pig.
What's that?
You're the guinea pig.
Yeah, exactly. So I told them Saturday morning, I said, look, just try it out. Because I took their helmets Friday, I gave it back to them Saturday, and I said, just try it out. If you don't like it, then fine, I'll take care of it. I'm sure at some point I'll sell it. There's people that have their kids that want to have a headset, and it would work exactly just fine for that inside of a UTV or whatever. So I knew, and I always love having extra radio, so I wasn't concerned about having extra cabling or radios. And like I said, by the next morning, as we were going back up, I was driving with them in the truck, and they threw me some cash. They said, "Here, thanks." so they took them. So it was worthwhile to them, worthwhile to us, and it made the experience unbelievable.
Okay. Well, thanks, Scott. We appreciate it, and we'll just end it right there. Next week we're at the Salt Lake Off-Road Expo, so we may or may not have a live. We'll stay tuned. So have a good one. Thanks, Scott.
Hey, thanks, guys.